how do you take 300 years of history, rename it entirely, and somehow not lose 20 million customers in the process? I mean, it sounds literally impossible, doesn't it?
Well, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into exactly how the insurance giant Aviva pulled off one of the most massively complex, high-stakes brand consolidations in corporate history. It is an absolute masterclass in strategy, and we're going to unpack exactly how they made it happen.
We're going to break this down into 5 quick phases. First, a 300-year legacy. Second, the great brand gamble. Third, a logistical masterclass. Fourth, marketing the migration. And finally, a modern global powerhouse. All right, let's jump right into part 1, a 300-year legacy. To really grasp the massive risk Aviva took here, we've got to understand the sheer weight of history they were carrying on their shoulders.
Because this kind of legacy doesn't just spring up overnight. We're talking roots going all the way back to London's Hand-in-Hand Society in 1696, literally right after the Great Fire. Then you fold in the Norwich Union in 1797, the Commercial Union in 1861, and General Accident in 1885. This centuries-long journey ultimately led to some massive mergers, like CGU in 98 and CGNU in the year 2000. So they weren't just carrying a corporate name. They were carrying centuries of deeply localized intergenerational trust.
Which brings us to part 2, the great brand gamble. This right here is the pivotal moment that changed the company's trajectory forever. So it's 2007, and CEO Andrew Moss rolls out this incredibly ambitious mandate: one Aviva, twice the value. The explicit goal was to harness a single, unified global identity to literally double earnings per share by 2012. Sounds great on paper, right? But getting there meant dismantling the very foundations that built the company in the first place.
See, the old strategy was all about relying on fiercely independent regional brands. We're talking absolute market leaders like Norwich Union in the UK, Hibernian in Ireland, and Commercial Union in Poland. Together, these legacy names were generating 40% of total revenue. But this new strategy, it demanded sacrificing those beloved cash cows for an entirely new, completely unproven global name. To really grasp the anxiety in the boardroom back then, you just have to listen to Peter Walsh from Millward Brown. Around April 2008, he pointed out that this rebranding ran the massive risk of throwing away all the heritage, trust, and prestige built up over such a long period. They were literally risking centuries of bulletproof reputation for a brand that honestly meant very little to the average consumer at the time.
Think about what was on the line here. If they failed in the UK market alone by dropping the Norwich Union name, they were jeopardizing 20 million active customer relationships. Plus, they faced potential reputational ruin that would impact 15,000 UK employees and their local communities. And you know how financial services work. A rapid drop-off in brand awareness immediately leads to falling sales volumes. The margin for error here was basically zero.
So how do you actually execute something like that? Let's move to part 3. A logistical masterclass, and look at how they managed this absolute operational nightmare behind the scenes. It took a dedicated core team of exactly 700 people working in perfect sync across the central London office and local units worldwide. And keep in mind, this wasn't just a marketing team updating a logo on a website. This was a total, ground-up operational overhaul.
The sheer scale of this execution is just staggering. They had to contact 13 million customers directly about the migration. Now, you would expect a flood of panic and complaints, wouldn't you? But incredibly, they kept the complaint rate to an astonishingly low 0.005% in the UK.
To pull this off without entirely breaking the business, they had to tackle a monumental operational checklist. I'm talking about updating 65,000 email addresses, printing 30,000 new staff passes, and updating 49 legal entity names. They even had to change almost 1,000 bank account names and 970 fund names. And that's all while retraining every single frontline employee simultaneously.
And to mitigate the massive risk, they completely avoided a one-size-fits-all approach. In the UK, they went with the big bang strategy, just an immediate hard switch straight to Aviva on June 1st, 2009. But in Ireland and Poland, they used these careful multi-phase transitions. They slowly introduced the Aviva name alongside the legacy brand, like Hibernian Aviva, for a whole year before fully taking over, just to prevent market whiplash.
All right, let's jump to part 4, marketing the migration. Because it's one thing to change the name internally, but how do you convince an incredibly cynical public to actually embrace this massive shift?
Well, they didn't just announce a name change. They introduced a completely new promise. No one recognizes you like Aviva. They strategically used the rebrand to signal a total departure from the historically poor customer service of the broader financial sector. They wanted to position this new name as a renewed commitment to the individual.
To do that, the UK campaign rolled out in 3 very systematic steps. Step 1 started in December 2008. They focused purely on building fame using celebrity ads. Step 2 kicked in right before the June launch, pivoting heavily to that customer care promise to build trust. And finally, Step 3 happened post-rebrand, aiming to drive actual product consideration. So it was a clear pipeline: first fame, then trust, then actual sales. And the success of that campaign was honestly astronomical. Before they started, spontaneous brand awareness was sitting at a baseline of just 4%, and their target for the end of 2009 was 52%. But at the campaign's peak, it skyrocketed to 79%. They completely shattered their targets months ahead of schedule. Which leads us nicely into part 5, a modern global powerhouse. Let's look at the financial titan this massive marketing and logistical gamble actually created.
First off, the name Aviva itself is derived from the Latin word viva, meaning alive, and that perfectly encapsulated their energized, unified corporate identity going forward. It successfully stripped away all the old-fashioned baggage of those centuries-old legacy brands.
And having this single, powerful global brand enables some incredibly aggressive expansion. They weren't just maintaining the status quo anymore. They were acquiring. They bought Friends Life Group in 2015 for £5.6 billion, snapped up AIG Life in 2024, and then capped it off by completing a massive £3.7 billion buyout of Direct Line Group in 2025, which made them the UK's absolute largest motor insurer. So what is the modern payoff for all of this? Well, in 2024, they brought in an annual revenue of £22.74 billion. Today, they're supported by 25.2 million loyal customers worldwide, and they manage over £407 billion in assets. The gamble didn't just work, it created an absolute empire.
I'm going to leave you with this final thought as we wrap up this explainer. When you look at today's bloated corporate giants, the ones completely weighed down by dozens of fragmented, localized legacy brands, who do you think needs to take this exact same gamble next? It's definitely something to ponder. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next one.